Yeah, it should be there now. On YouTube. Yeah, Tanya Rabba. Welcome, folks.
No.
I'm saying that's why I went.
There's some like I said at the front of the
Yeah,
class.
it
and some
seems like
at
it's
the
on.
back.
I don't know if the men are allowed to sit on this side of the bus.
Not a problem, but you might have problems from the one next to you, so just beware.
She looks pretty tough.
I know. Okay, welcome, folks, to everyone. Hanukkah is upon us, the festival of lights, and our hope tonight is that we will illuminate your lives, because if your lives are illuminated, guess what? Then the world will be illuminated, right? And that's what the uniqueness of the story of Hanukkah is, that we have the lights in a time of darkness, and we want to bring light into a dark world, and the world is pretty dark. So to bring the first to bring an immense light into this world, you know who does that? My wife. She brings an immense light into this world. Without further ado, my dear wife, Simcha, she's going to share with us our first session. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ronnie, look, you're still on it.
Yeah, but you'll be there. Don't worry.
Okay. All right.
No.
No, we're fine. Okay. Tonight we're going to be speaking about something very interesting. It's called How Many Candles? A Story of Hillel and Shammai. So just to give a bit of an introduction. If you go to a major university and you walk into the study hall, what do you hear? Silence. Nothing, right? Great minds at work, and it's totally silent, right? Walk into your yeshiva study hall, what do you hear?
Deafening.
Deafening noise, a cacophony. So much noise going on. Great noise. Hundreds of students sitting across from their partner, arguing, seemingly arguing. This is what I think. And the other one says, no, this is what I think. Well, prove it. I don't know. You prove your side. And they're raising their voice and they're gesticulating. And it's noisy and it's chaotic. Great minds at work, right? What's going on there? What's going on there? They seem to be at each other's throats. And yet, what are these study partners called? They're called chavrusas. What is a chavrusa? Chavrusa is an Aramaic term for chavirim, friends. They're called friends. They don't look like friends, but they are friends. Not only are they friends, they are the best kind of friends. So why? They're not arguing out of ego. They're not arguing out of need to be right? Their only goal is to discover the truth of what they're learning. What is it that God means by that? What is it that God wants from me? And to discover the truth is what all of the back and forth is truly about. The arguing is what we call the Shem Shamayim, for the sake of heaven, right? For the sake of heaven, for the sake of God, for the sake of learning and understanding everything in the proper way. That is what all the noise is about. Who are the most famous pair of chavrusas? Hillel and Shammai, right? So we're going to be speaking about Hillel and Shammai tonight. Who were Hillel and Shammai? In ancient times, when Shimon HaTzadik, who was the last member of the Great Assembly, passed away in 273 BCE, a period of the Jewish law system came about, and that was known as the period of the Zugos. Zugos meaning pairs. Why was it called the period of the pairs? From that time on, and for almost 300 years, there were always two saintly rabbis that led the Jewish community. One was called the Nasi meaning prince or president, and the other was called the Av Beis Din, the father, the leader of the Beis Din, of the Jewish court. So one was the president, one was the leader of the court, and all the peers actually that were of that period are actually listed in Pirkei Avos. Now, the last pair of these zugos, of these pairs, of that era were Hillel and Shammai. So they were the last of the great pairs of saintly rabbis that led the Jewish people at that time. Hillel and his colleague Shammai were both disciples of Shmari and Avtalion, and they were the last pair of zugos. They were the last pair of this era. They were appointed in the year 33 BCE, which is a couple thousand years ago, right? And the position also came with the right to pass on their position to their descendants. So it was Hillel and Shammai that held those positions, and then they had the right to pass it on to their generations. And actually, Beis Hillel passed it on to 14 generations. 14 generations of Beis Hillel, 14 generations of Hillel's descendants were part of this system, and they actually helped to guide the Jewish people through very difficult times. Both Hillel and Shammai were great scholars. They were very revered by everyone, and their devotion to Torah, to learning Torah and teaching Torah, was definitely legendary. Now, not much is known about Shammai's personal life, but we do have a lot of stories in the Talmud about Hillel. Hillel came from Babylon to Israel, and he was very poor. There are stories about how poor he was, but even though he was poor, he was very devoted to learning Torah. The Beis Medrash, he was so poor that he couldn't afford the few coins to be allowed into the Beis Medrash every day. So since he couldn't afford those few coins and he really wanted to learn Torah, he would go up to the roof of the Beis Medrash where there was a skylight, and he would lie down on the skylight so he could hear through the window, and that's how he would learn the lessons of the day. Every day, that's what he did. They would all join into the Beis Medrash. He would go up to the roof, and he would lie down on the skylight. It once happened while he was lying on the roof that a very big snowstorm came about, and it was extremely cold. This is what my husband said in Israel, but it can in parts of Israel, for sure, it can snow. A very big snowstorm.
Jerusalem
is Yeah.
on a mountain and they
It kind of bounces.
Oh, Jerusalem for
Except
sure
with
gets snow.
Snow, but a snowstorm or two
Global
different
warming, they don't get so much anymore.
Big snowstorm in Jerusalem just a few years back.
For sure, they were throwing snowballs for at least 12 hours, and then it all melted. So he was on the roof, and the snowstorm hit, and it was very cold, and he became so cold that he passed out. Everyone had left. And when they came back the next day, the students came back the next day, they entered into the Beis Medrash, and they saw that it was very dark, like, what's going on? And they looked up at the skylight, and what did they see? Hillel. So they quickly went up to the roof, dug him out of the snow, brought him down, wrapped him in blankets, and revived him. And actually, after that happened, they changed the rules, and anyone who couldn't afford the few coins to come into the Beis Medrash was allowed to come in for free. Hillel also, according to the Talmud, possessed great character traits. He was of great character. He had a reputation of being impossible. It was impossible for him to get angry. And the Talmud tells a story about a wealthy man who made a bet, and he said, I will bet 400 dinars, which was quite a fortune at the time, that I can make Hillel angry. Challenge accepted. It didn't work, and he kept his 400 dinars because he could not make Hillel angry. Now, Hillel and Shammai were partners. They also were the heads of two different schools of learning. The disciples of Hillel were called Beis Hillel, the house of Hillel. The disciples of Shammai were called Beis Shammai, the disciples of Shammai. And as you probably know, whatever question came up, Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai always came up with the opposite answer. Their opinions were diametrically opposed, and Hillel would come up with his answer, Shammai would come up with his, and they never agreed. In fact, Hillel and Shammai themselves only came to this disagreement, this machlekes, 3 times. But throughout the years, Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai disagreed over 300 times. So they had very different views of halacha. They had very different views of Jewish law, very different views of how things were to be viewed. And so they always disagreed. But so in most cases, Shammai was more strict. And in most cases, Hillel took like a softer, more lenient understanding approach. And the Talmud rules in favor of Hillel virtually every time. Beis Hillel, we always go according to the opinion of Beis Hillel. When Mashiach, just by the way, it says when Mashiach comes, we will go by the opinion of Beis Shammai. But until Mashiach comes, it's Beis Hillel all the way. Okay, so, and why is that? So in Pirkei Avos, we have this following statement. Any dispute that is for the sake of heaven will endure. A dispute not for the sake of heaven will not endure. What is a dispute? What is an example of a dispute for the sake of heaven? The disputes of Hillel and Shammai. Their disputes were not personal. Their disputes were not there. There was no ego. There was no animosity. They were, just like we spoke about the Bachrim who were in the Beis Medrash, they were only seeking to find the truth. What is it that God wants? What is it that God means by this? How does God want us to fulfill this mitzvah? And so there was machlekes, there was disagreement, but that was all l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven, only to know exactly what it was that God wants from us. Okay. The Talmud actually, as we said, we virtually always go according to Beis Hillel. And the Talmud actually tells a story that it once happened that a heavenly voice proclaimed, both these and those are the words of the living God. However, the law is in accordance with the opinion of Beis Hillel. So even Hashem agreed that Beis Hillel was the way to go. And then the Talmud asks, since both these and those are the words of the living God, why was the school of Hillel privileged to have the law established in accordance with their opinion? If they're both words of the living God, if they both have validity, why are we going with Hillel? So the Talmud answers that the reason is that the law follows Beis Hillel because the students of Hillel were humble and they showed great restraint when they were challenged. They were humble and soft. And also in the Beis Medrash of Beis Hillel, whenever they taught a subject, they would not only teach the perspective of Hillel, they would also teach the perspective of Shammai. In other words, they didn't restrict it to just their opinion. They would always also teach the opinion of Shammai. And not only would they also teach the opinion of Shammai, but they would actually teach Shammai's opinion first, and then would say the opinion of Hillel. So because they were so inclusive and so flexible, the Talmud says that's why Hashem decided that Beis Hillel would be the ones to decide what the halacha would be. And according to the Talmud also, of course, as we said, the arguments of Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai were never sank into personal attacks. It was not these people against these people. It was never like that. They actually got along very well. Hillel and Shammai were great friends. Their students also got along very well. They had a deep respect for each other, a fondness for each other, and ultimately, the ultimate proof that they got along is that families from Beis Hillel and from Beis Shammai, their children would marry each other. So it wasn't, I think the world could learn a lot from that, because you're either on this side or you're on that side. You're either voted for this person or you voted for that person. And, those two things don't go together. But as far as Hillel and Shammai went, it was not personal. It was not negative. And there was a lot of love between them because that was their outlook. We are both looking for the truth. And if we're just looking for the truth, then we're all on the same team. Okay. Now, the students of Hillel then, where they were soft, they were inclusive, they were patient, they were loving. And actually, they embodied the character of their teacher, Hillel. The Talmud says many stories about Hillel's humility, about his lack of ego, about his endless patience with others. But where did Hillel learn these things? He taught these things, but where did he learn these things? So in the first chapter of Pirkei Avos, Hillel famously says, one should be of the disciples of Aaron, Aaron HaKohen, brother of Moshe Rabbeinu. One should be of the disciples of Aaron and constantly pursue peace. So who was Aaron HaKohen? He was the brother of Moshe. What was said about him? He was Ohev Shalom, Rodef Shalom, and Ohev Es HaBrios. He was a lover of peace, a pursuer of peace, and a lover of all creations. And so indeed, the same could be said of Hillel, right? Okay, so that's a little bit of a history of Hillel and Shammai. What does this have to do with Hanukkah, right? What is the story about Hanukkah? So one of the most famous disputes between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai was about the number of lights that we light on each night of Hanukkah. And I see people shaking their heads and they know something about this. After all, they lived not long after the Hanukkah miracle. It was very, very soon after. So the Talmud tells us like this. Beis Shammai says, on the first night, we light 8, and after that, we gradually reduce. So what was Beis Shammai saying? First night, the whole menorah is full. Second night, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and on the last night, only light 1. That was the opinion of Beis Shammai. Don't worry, we do go according to Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel says, the Talmud says, on the first day, 1 is lit, and thereafter they are progressively increased. Still part of the Talmud, Ula said, in the West, which means Israel, 2 sages, Rabbi Yossi bar Avon and Rabbi Yossi bar Zavida, argue. They have an argument about what Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai are talking about here. One maintains the rationale of Beis Shammai is to represent the days still to come, and that of Beis Hillel is to represent the days that are gone, that are past. But the other maintains Beis Shammai's reason is that it should correspond to the bulls that are offered on the altar during Sukkot, while Beis Hillel's reason is that we ascend in matters of holiness, but do not descend. Okay, so what are they saying? According to Shammai, we start off with 8 candles, 8 lights on the menorah, and then we decrease by 1 every night. According to Hillel, we start with 1 candle and we increase until on the last night we have a full menorah. And of course, the halacha follows Hillel, right? But why the difference of opinion? What perspective do we see from Hillel and Shammai that made them have these 2 very different opinions on how we light the Hanukkah menorah? What is behind it? So Shammai says to start with everything. He says that this idea to start big and then decrease relates to the 70 bulls that were offered in the Beis HaMikdash on Sukkot. What is that about? I had bulls, like sacrificed, animal sacrifices, right? In on Sukkot. So on Sukkot, we start off with 8 bulls on the first day, goes down to 7, goes down to 6, and it goes all the way down to 1. What do the 70 bulls represent? And why do we start with a lot and go down to a little? So according to the sages, the 70 bulls that were offered as a sacrifice on the days of Sukkot are representative of the 70 nations of the world. Okay, at that time, I guess there were 70 major nations of the world, 70 languages. So those 70 bulls represented the 70 nations of the world. Why are we making a sacrifice for the 70 nations of the world? in order to atone for them. Why do we need to atone for the 70 nations of the world? Because on Sukkot, we start to daven, we start to pray for rain. So if we want to make sure that there's going to be rain, sufficient rain, not only in the land of Israel, but around the whole wide world, then we have to daven and do an atonement and pray for all the 70 nations so that there will be rain all over the world. Okay, so if you can imagine, we're doing atonement for the 70 nations. Now, it's hard enough to do atonement for yourself. It's hard enough to do atonement for the Jewish nation. For the 70 nations, that was a big, big job. There's a lot of darkness there. There's a lot of negativity there. Atonement for 70 nations? You got to pull out the big guns. So what did they do? On the first night, they made a huge sacrifice of the maximum amount that was going to happen on the whole of Sukkot. In other words, they made a big blast of spirituality, of atonement to kind of shock and start to bring that atonement about. That's why they did it on Sukkot that way. If you want to bring atonement for those 70 nations, you got to start with a bang, right? And take out as much spiritual energy as you can to complete a task that's going to be really difficult. Now, Hillel said, you need to start small. You need to start small and increase because as a rule, and as we heard in the Talmud, we don't decrease in holiness. If you start doing something, then you don't go back on it. If someone started to light a certain amount of candles, they don't go back on it. If someone took on a certain mitzvah, you don't go backwards. When it comes to holiness, you only increase. So as far as Hillel is concerned, it doesn't make sense to start with 8 and decrease. Start with 1 and increase in holiness. That's the way of the world. That's the way of spirituality. So Shammai and Hillel don't differ on how many candles. They just differ on where to begin. Beis Shammai said, we're living in a very dark world. There's a lot of darkness out there. We need to bring light. That's what the Hanukkah candles are all about. So on the first day of Hanukkah, you have 8 miracles right in front of you. So bring out the big guns. You want to fill the world with light? Light up that whole menorah. Light it all up and bring all that light. Because as far as Shammai was concerned, one little candle is kind of like building a sandcastle at the beach. First big wave comes, it's over. You need strength. You need a lot of strength in order to bring light into the world. So give it all you got. But Beis Hillel said, you don't need a lot of light to dispel darkness. You just need one little candle. So start with 1. You want to dispel the darkness? Don't take on the darkness with both hands and think you're going to vanquish the world's darkness in one night. You will vanquish the world's darkness, but take it step by step, because maybe you're not going to get to the end. Take it step by step, light 1 candle, and then increase the next day to 2 candles. And with baby steps and baby steps, by the end of Hanukkah, you're going to end up with a whole Hanukkah full of light. That was what Hillel said. And this was Hillel's point of view. This was Shammai's point of view. And so what was it? Really a debate between potential and actual. And this actually was what drove much of the machlekes, much of the argument between them was always between the potential and the actual. I'll just give you, okay. Okay. So what's that?
You're gonna take a vote and see who we agree with?
No. Okay, so maybe in the times of the temple, when they sacrificed all those bulls and they had a lot of spiritual energy around, maybe that was a time to like bring on the big guns and go full force. But today, in our dark exile, we have to have a new strategy. We have to take baby steps. We have to look at do the mitzvahs. We have to take those baby steps and do them slowly, bring more light and more light. That is the way of our avoda, of our serving God. That is the way of our world. We need to focus on positive action. Don't worry about eradicating darkness. You're not going to do it in one night. Just take one small step in the right direction, just like one little candle. The key, though, is that tomorrow you're going to light 2, right? And the next day you're going to light 3, and then you're going to light 4 until your menorah is full of light. And so too in our own lives, in our own personal struggles, making small, manageable changes, taking those baby steps, step by step, moving in a positive direction. That is what's going to affect lasting change, lasting light in our world. And in the end, as we said, here in this example of Chanukah, as in virtually all examples, the Jewish people followed Beis Hillel. And in the very word Chanukah, Ches, Nun, Vav, Chaf, and He is an acronym, Ches, Neres, V'Halacha, Kebeis Hillel. 8 candles, and the halacha is like Beis Hillel, right there in the name. Because when you do a mitzvah, the light never goes out, right? A mitzvah is forever. The light of a mitzvah stays forever. It protects you, it guides you, it brings blessing to you. So today is the light that you gained from yesterday, but tomorrow, sounding like I said, tomorrow you will have the light from yesterday and today, and the light will build, and the light will build. Each mitzvah stands, makes you go higher and higher and higher. This is the opinion of Hillel, and this is the way we lead our lives. Darkness can fade and disappear with time, but light that shines from a mitzvah will only increase, become more and more and more. And that's our story.
We all follow the channel.
What's that?
We follow the channel.
Good response.
Here, if we can pass this out. Pass it out, don't pass out. Not yet. Okay, folks, please take something to eat in the back. And we're gonna start in a minute and 10 seconds. 1 minute and 10 seconds. Huh?
But it's on 5 seconds.
Now it's 5. No problem. No problem. Okay. Everybody got a paper? Pass out copies? Take a copy. Hey, folks, everybody on your best behavior. We have lots of people online. They don't see you, they only see me, so I have to be on best behavior. Oh, thank you. There's plastic cups up there. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we got a brief break over here. Oh, David.
What a mess.
Okay.
I wanted to get 2 more. Yeah.
Baruch Hashem as well too. With the understanding what Baruch means. Break down.
Yeah.
Rabbi did a short night session. They were Baruch.
Thanks.
Yeah, and it resonated like that and never left.
Well, that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Uh,
I usually I don't work.
well, before I answer your question, Jamaica is our like tongue-in-cheek arch enemy. My country's arch enemy. People always say that because Jamaica is very well.
All right, folks, we are ready.
But my eyes, I think Satan is on Jamaica. But people normally say Jamaica because they know Jamaica. That's what this night of the French.
Okay. All right, folks, please take a seat.
Yes, me, yes, me.
Okay.
So you're good at it, yes, me. From my accent.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol niyeh bidvaroi. L'chaim, l'chaim, everybody. L'chaim l'bracha. We're coming from Yutes Chav Kislev, from the day, the 19th and the 20th of Kislev, that our dear Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad movement, author of the Tanya, was released from prison. And from there we come to Chanukah, celebrating the Festival of Lights, where we illuminate, as we mentioned earlier, the world. So the Greeks, they wanted to change our ways. What is the Jewish way that they wanted to destroy? They didn't want to destroy the Jew. They wanted to destroy the holiness of the Jew. That there should be something supra-rational in our lives. That intellect, they appreciated. They appreciated Torah. Torah is, brings a lot of wisdom to people. As a matter of fact, in South Korea, they study the Talmud. Children study the Talmud. Why? Not because it's holy, because Jews become smart. They're good businessmen. They know how to make a dollar. They know how to succeed. And that the Greeks would have been happy with. But that's not what makes the Jew in their study of Torah. They wanted to eradicate the holiness in it. So what is our response to that? So we're going to learn now something interesting. It's a precision in a learning of a Rashi. A Rashi is the commentator, a simple commentator on the Torah. And you have copies in front of you, everybody. Yeah, I have a copy. You can write on it if you'd like to. And this is from the book of Numbers. And it's a repeat of what was already in the book of Exodus. The book of Exodus is about the forming of the Jewish people, that we got the Torah Mount Sinai, and we were given how to make a home for God, to make the tabernacle, to make the Mishkan, the sanctuary, and in the sanctuary, the artifacts that go there, which include, of course, the candelabra, the menorah. So in the book of Shmoyes Parshas Tetzaveh, we've given the command about the candelabra, but here it's repeated in your text that you have in front of you, book of Numbers, that this is a work of the candelabra hammered from gold, from its base to its flower, it was hammered. It was one piece of gold. And from that one piece of gold, it was hammered out. It wasn't, pieces welded together, but from this one piece. According to the image that God showed Moses, so did he construct the candelabra. So the last part of the text, so he constructed the candelabra, is ambiguous. In the commentary, Rashi offers two explanations. You have it in front of you. Rashi, the next text. The one who made it, whomever it may have been, Midrash suggests it was made by itself through the hands of God. Okay, these answers are a little unusual. What do you mean by whoever made it? What does that mean? That's an unusual phrase. Why would Rashi use such a phrase? Either tell us who did it, or tell us maybe you don't know, who did it. But by the one who did it, sounds like a very unusual way to express what those words mean. Now, so we know from Rashi previously that often we don't know exactly who did all the artifacts. We know that Bezalel and Eliav, they were in charge of the tabernacle, the Mishkan, and its artifacts. Who did anything in specific? Sometimes we know, and sometimes we don't know. Fine. So whoever made it according to the image that God had showed Moshe, that's the first explanation. Okay, we need to understand a little more the nuance in those words. The second answer is telling us that God himself did it. It was a miracle. Miracle. So we need to understand what's going on over here. The second explanation is saying that God did it. Look at the words from the text, from the verse in the Torah. Any indication there that God has anything to do with making the menorah? Look in your paper. Any indication there in the text? This is the work of the candelabra, hammered from gold, from its base to its flower. It was hammered according to the image that God showed Moses. So did he construct the candelabra. Seemingly, there's no implication that God did it. So why is Rashi telling this then? Rashi is to explain the simple words of the text in its context, of course, but how is this fitting into the simple words when there's no implication that God did it? First question, right? Second question is, why do we need a second explanation? The only reason Rashi would give a second explanation is because the first one is insufficient. What's insufficient with the first one? That you need to offer a second explanation. Clear? Yeah? You're with me? How many fingers do I have up? Okay. Just want to know if you're here. All right. And a third thing that we need to understand, the verse says that it was done according to the image that God showed Moses. Now, the second explanation is that God did it himself. Thank you. Oh, God, you did it according to the image that you showed to Moses. Like, what's the big deal in that? That you did it according to what you told Moses if you're the one that did it. Why is the verse saying that? It sounds redundant. It doesn't fit in. Doesn't make sense. And the final question, the fourth question is, Rashi said the Midrash suggests. Rashi only brings down the source for anything when you need to know that it came from a particular source. Because remember, Rashi is not about source material. He's about what? Understanding the verse itself on its own terms, not based on what the sages say in the Talmud, not what the Midrash says, right? So the fact he says Midrash, and he's giving the source, that itself, there has to be a reason why he's doing that. Because again, he's only coming to explain the simple meaning. But just to give you a little background, not every commentator is coming to explain the simple meaning of the text. Some are giving the hinted meaning behind what's the homiletic meaning, the esoteric meaning. There are many layers of meanings in the text. Rashi's coming to teach to a 5-year-old. By the way, The 5-year-old that Rashi speaks to, I haven't reached yet. It's some 5-year-old, but meaning simplistic, not challenged. Now, with this, we're going to now come to answer. The way what we think Rashi's problem over here is that his question is, he's bothered about who constructed the candelabra. But that's actually Rashi's not his problem. You know what Rashi's problem is? And the simple, in context, what the problem in this verse is? What did I mention before? Where was the command given initially? In the book of Exodus, Parshas Tetzaveh. And it's being repeated here. To what end? Why is it being repeated? Why the need to repeat things that were already told to us? That this is a job for Aaron, the high priest. It's his, and it needs to be hammered out exactly the way we just read in our verse. This is a repetition. To what end?
Repeated where?
In Bamidbar, in the book of Numbers, right? It's first mentioned in the book of Exodus, Parshat Tetzaveh. Now it's here repeated. So the 5-year-old in us, right, who is questioning, why is it being repeated? That's what Rashi is coming to explain. So with this, we need to have a context. In Rashi, the verse is coming after the inauguration of the altar by the 12 leaders of the 12 tribes, which was before the candelabra is being introduced in the book of Numbers. And the leaders all had a unique mitzvah to bring an offering on the altar of God. Aaron, who's the high priest, the holiest person, who's got the holiest job, felt a little down. He had no part in this. He had no part. So God says to him, no, don't. Yours is going to be greater than theirs. Theirs is bringing the inaugural offerings on the altar, absolutely, on behalf of their tribe, but yours is the honors greater than theirs. You will kindle and prepare the lights. So that's the beginning of Parshas Bahaloischa. Bahaloischa is Anerus, in the kindling of the lights of the menorah that will be through Aaron, the high priest. That he missed out on the inauguration of giving an offering on the altar, but yours is greater because you're going to have the menorah. Okay. Is that a satisfying answer?
No,
Why not?
we still have to write it.
Huh?
We still have to write it, who's being referred to it, yeah. Rashi's explanation.
Okay, go ahead. So with this,
Hot or cold?
I'm hot.
You're hot, well, we're all wearing our winter clothes, yeah, we're fine.
huh? Really? Okay.
Who's better?
Okay. Now, what is so special about the menorah that he felt satisfied that he has something unique? Look at the verse and tell me. Look at the verse. Because it's made by the image that God showed Moses. The candelabra is the only artifact which God produced an image to show to Moses. All the other artifacts in the Mishkan, in the home of God, there was no image shown on how to make it except for the menorah, right? Now, what was the difficulty that Moses had with the menorah? He didn't know how to make it. Was that his issue? No, that was not his issue. His issue was that something unique about the menorah. Why is the Holy Temple having a menorah being lit? What's the purpose? Does God need light? God needs our sacrifices on the altar. Because when you bring a sacrifice on an altar, it's like you bringing your own animal soul that is being replaced by an animal, physical animal, on the altar. It's like you're giving of yourself to God. What can you give to a man who has every single tie on Father's Day? What can you give to God that has everything? You can give your something he doesn't have, your animal soul, your negativity. You can bring that on the altar. Well, what's the point of the candelabra? It's for light. God needs light. Does God need light? So what's the purpose of it? It's to show that the divine presence of God is constantly with the Jewish people. The Kohen would light the menorah, and he would light the menorah, the middle candle, which was to the west, facing the west, lit 24 hours. Miracle. Why? To show to the world, to show to the Jew first, but then to show to the world that the presence of God resides with the Jewish people. With that, Moses had a difficulty. A human being is going to make this thing, and it's going to bring the presence of God, to bring that testimony that God, he grappled with that. How can an artifact convey the divine presence? So God showed him. That's what he shows him, the image of the candelabra. That, yes, I will empower a mortal being that they can be the conduit to create through this candelabra the presence of God in this world, the light of God. Is that clear? Therefore, the one who made it is suggesting to us that we don't have someone, it's not important who made it, insignificant of the one who made it, because it's all of us that can, so to speak, make it. What do we make? What God showed to Moses, that through this artifact, the presence of God will be revealed to the Jewish people and to the entire world. That's what's important. And that's why the verse is telling us, if you go back to the verse, right? What does the verse say? So did he construct the candelabra, right? And whoever made it, that's what Rashi said, the one who made it. Any of us can make it, so to speak, if you will. Any one of us can make it. But what's the important thing is what's being made over here is a connection between the divine presence of God, that we can make it and bring that divine presence in this world. That's what's special about the menorah. That's what's given over to Aaron, the high priest. And that then becomes something, he celebrates. That he is the one who is given that privilege, that he can do this mitzvah. That consoles him. So Rashi's first explanation, the Rebbe says in a Sikha, and look at the Sikhas, the one who made it, whomever it may be, the Torah deliberately conceals the constructor's identity because the Torah's intention is not to praise the artisan who constructed it for not deviating from God's instructions. The Torah intends to demonstrate the importance of the candelabra regardless of who made it. It is important because it was made according to the image shown by God to Moses, and that we can then bring the divine light into this world. So then based on that, we have another question then. Okay, that gives us an explanation of why that would console Aaron. Right now, we understand the context of why it's being repeated. First, to tell us about the magnificence of the candelabra. Aaron is the one who is now empowered specifically to do this mitzvah, bringing the divine presence. Why do we need a second explanation?
Jews are never satisfied with one.
That's terrible. Terrible truth. So Rashi said medrash, meaning not the simple meaning, but it's in the context of what we're talking about, that you want to console Aaron. So what would even be greater than that the artifact is something that man is empowered to be able to bring the divine presence, is that the artifact itself is made by God. So Rashi gives it as a second explanation, but says medrash. In other words, it's not the simple meaning, right? It's not the simple meaning, right? It is the homiletic. It is the expounded meaning, if you will, right? But to bring sort of this concept of what we're talking about, the consolation to Aaron, to bring that idea out, Medrash says even God made it. Now, imagine you're getting to do a mitzvah with an artifact, the candelabra, that God himself made. Amazing. Now, is that clear? So we now understand the Rashi. You just now came away with understanding a simple statement of Rashi that if we could, like, we would have just gone over it, learned it. If you're learning Chumash Rashi like we do daily here, by the way, every day, 8:40 a.m., you can join online or here. We learn the Torah portion with Rashi, and we try to, go into the details. Yes.
There is one key that would allow us to understand it. It's like there's two things. Moshe doesn't understand it. He needs an image. And we don't know what this candelabra really represents. If you take the notion of a name, like a person's name, you make a name for yourself.
Is this a question or a statement?
No, I'm just saying that's.
Because we're rushed on time, so.
Okay, but a name. If you make a name for yourself, which Moshe is the humblest man, he can't imagine somebody making a name for himself, a reputation. That's what.
I mean, through making the candelabra.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Okay. So let's go to, we understand now Rashi on his explanation. Let's go a little deeper into the wine, the hidden message over here, which is important to apply in our lives. The first explanation is someone made it. That's unimportant because, it's revealing the presence of God, the light of God, right? That it's meant to be, that the Jewish people recognize and the world recognizes the light of God is with the Jewish people, right? Second explanation, God made it. Contradiction, one to the other. But was it God that first, told Moses, do it, got complicated, and now God had to come through and do it? What's going on? So the Maharal, Prague, the famous rabbi in Prague that is the one who fashioned the golem. So he explains like this. You can't say that God did this alone. Really what happened, the way he explains, is that it was made, but remember it was made from one piece of gold. So it was thrown into a furnace, make it malleable, and Moses knew exactly the directions of what needed to be done, hammered here, hammered there. It was hammered out, right? And through the hammering, all of a sudden, it appeared on its, so to speak, from heaven. It was not their effort. They put their effort in, but the miracle of God that made it happen in the end. That's how he explains it, and how the two come together and it's not a contradiction one to the other. Is that clear? So what comes out of this is an amazing thought, and very relevant in the days that we're in, and especially what's going on in Israel and what the message of Chanukah is. Matisyahu and his sons, and the Jews that they inspired to fight against the Assyrian Greeks. They were few, they were weak, and yet they were victorious. We don't celebrate their victory. What do we celebrate? A little flask of oil that was found? Why? Why not the victory? Because victory is about me and my accomplishment. We won! Every nation, they're victorious, whether it's on the soccer field or whether it's on the field of battle. Nationalism's come strong. We won. We're the best. That's not Jewish. Because you know what? A few hundred years later, we actually lost. The Romans destroyed the Holy Temple, and we got, we're no longer Holy Temple, and we were sent into exile, right? The exile that we're in now. What do we celebrate? A miracle of God. That's what we celebrate. That's what Jews do. We don't celebrate our greatness. We celebrate God's greatness in our lives and in the world before us. And this is exactly what the story is over here with the candelabra. This is where it begins. We make it. It's formed by someone, right? Forms it. And in the end, the artisan, anybody who's an artist, usually they take great pride in their work. Look what I did. But a real artist, a Jewish artist, the way they're supposed to be, a chassid, doesn't take pride in their work. They take, thank God for the inspiration God gave me. And then in the end, it's the work that he did through me. The work that he did through me. I'm just the conduit. And that's what the candelabra is here. They form, all of a sudden, there it is. I don't take the credit for the great ingenuity and the great architectural, genius. Because think of it. Take it from a block of gold, hammer it out. You have to be a pure genius to be able to do that, right? To take pieces and to melt and weld it together is one thing, but you're not allowed to make it that way. So you can take full credit, but that's not what a Jew does. Doesn't take the credit. You can even go so far, the Talmud tells us that a Jew is Zayreya Umayme Bechaya Lamim. A Jew plants a seed, irrigates the land, does everything that you're supposed to do, and knows and has belief that it's only God that's going to make it grow. But I did everything. I did all the work. First of all, should I get at least some of the credit? I'm a darn good farmer. Now, maybe people don't want to take credit for that today. It's, beneath them, but not for the Jewish way. It's not. But yeah, the artist, I did darn good work. I really worked hard. I worked hard in raising my children. I worked hard at whatever it was that I developed. No. Victory is mine. That's the ways of the nations of the world. You look at world history, what's world history all about? This king fought this king, this nation defeated this nation. That's it. Well, that's all it's about. That's not what Jewish life's about. That's not what our history is. Our history is that we have a sage called Rashi. We have Rambam. We have humanity, godliness that we bring to the world. And that's the message over here in the menorah, whether it's planting a seed or anything that we do, that it's a recognition. And therefore comes the holiday of Chanukah, and we celebrate it not because of the victory, but because God's miracle that he does for us, that he shows that the presence of God is still with us. That's what counts for us, and that's what's important for us, and that's what our life is all about. That's why every mitzvah we do brings a presence and connection to God. You don't feel it? It doesn't take away from the reality and from the truth. Every mitzvah does that. Right now, we're learning Torah. You're being bound up with a perfect unity with God. But if you understand what we're learning and It's seeping into through your mind to your heart. But you might not feel the unity and the oneness. Know that that's what's happening. You're bound up with perfect oneness with God at this moment in the study of Torah. When you give tzedakah, you're bound up. When you put on your tefillin, lighting your menorah. This is the reality of what occurs through the mitzvahs that we do. And that's how we celebrate Hanukkah. That's what the candelabra is teaching us. And this is what's going on in Israel today. Unbelievable on how the world is changing in the land of Israel. 50 years ago, when we won the Six-Day War, which is such an open, clear miracle of God. For 3 weeks, we recognized that God was the one who did the miracle. And after that, we thought it was the IDF that did the miracle. And after that, oh, okay. Today, soldiers of Israel, they're seeing miracle after miracle. Is there tragedy? Of course there is. Absolutely. But we can choose what we want to look at, the tragedy or the miracle. Of course, when there's tragedy, we have to be there with and mourn for the loss of our brothers and sisters, absolutely. But what we need to see is the miracle of God that's going on in the land of Israel and with the people of Israel. It's unbelievable. And with that, I'm going to leave it at this. Now it's time for the next session, my dear son Mendel. All right, thank you, folks. Yeah, okay. Folks, take something and we're going to have a recess for 1.5 minutes. Yeah, turn it over. Huh? Yeah, I'm on right now. So I don't know what's going on. Oh, Hamid.
Screen.
Yeah, I know. Please.
Emails open?
Yes, sir. Focusing with our wonderful screen.
Still a lot of
Fixed in a moment. Hey, Mendel.
Is it okay now?
Okay, we want, how do we go back to,
Should
go
I-
back.
It'll be downloaded. Okay.
Has to be downloaded?
Yeah. Yeah, this one.
Okay. Wait, 1 second.
I'm ready.
You know. Someone.
I got it downloaded.
The other accent is like, they just see it though.
Yes.
Yeah, they
Everything,
turn up
yeah.
though. I had arrived in the later one.
Where is it?
The top one.
When you're really young, you have Scottish, you pick up all right. That's why.
Why isn't it going to there? Usually
Yeah,
there's
so
a.
you guys, you
I'll
can
fix
do that and also get it back
Yeah.
that he can share.
One moment. Just a moment, please. Please.
Oh, I should start those three.
Display settings.
Or from.
Extend, no. Duplicate this displays.
I don't want to duplicate the screen because there's a feature in PowerPoint that I can have my notes there and the other part goes up there.
Gotcha. Okay, no worries.
Do you want to do that?
Yep, revert. Now. Display settings.
It's in PowerPoint.
It is in PowerPoint, but I'm just gonna change this for a moment. 144 to 60 hertz. So that it doesn't go flickery. We don't like that. Keep changes. Be stable enough. Now we open PowerPoint. I'm just gonna go on slideshow.
Actually, if you do that, it should do the trick usually.
British colony.
Yes. So that all.
Beautiful. How are you doing?
Okay. Thank you.
Baruch Hashem.
They speak English in Montserrat. In Spain, there's Montserrat, maybe they say it that way in Spain. But not in the rest of the- They're all English. Montserrat is. Or what?
Good for you. All right, folks. How you been?
When you ride.
Sharon? I don't know. You have to share that screen, not this screen.
My mother still has her Irish.
No, this is already. No, there's two different PowerPoint, not a.
But then again, I don't really know.
You have to-
What this is securing it, but everyone says like. this.
Return to meeting, share screen.
Yeah, that one. I mean,
Excellent.
Okay. In Great Britain, these things make a
These two
difference.
important.
They make a big difference in Great Britain. No, in the sense that if someone's got part Irish, that's something, there's when Sophie married Prince Edward. It's like she has
Good.
an Irish.
It's Sharon.
grandmother,
Yep.
you know, that-
Tell my father to just go online to double check.
I'm doing that right. Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
And if you know, when you go into the Jewish world, everyone's a bit, this is a bit about this, a bit about, like, they're all the same, yeah. It's like, that's nothing, this doesn't really happen, you know, when somebody is, you know, half Polish, half Moroccan, so you're a bit of Irish, so.
Yeah, I think so. Check.
But of course, in that context, in that context, it makes a difference. But the best part is when you have these, if they ever find out. Prince Charles is Jewish, a lot of them Jewish grandfather. Seriously.
No way.
Yeah,
Close it and
seriously.
open it live.
I trace real genealogy and I.
Because you're not
I did
caught
the
up.
research and I found a
Go all the
site,
way, push
Oh.
down.
and this is not a jokey site or anything like this. Prince Philip's mother,
Let's see if I.
her father was
In the
Jewish, she
middle.
was raised in Poland,
Okay.
Oh, it doesn't seem.
married to.
Okay.
Yeah, you're there on
the
top.
Queen's granddaughter.
Okay.
Okay.
He was-
All right.
All right, folks, please take your seats. Rabbi Mendel
A lot of Jews in that family, a lot of Jews in the royal family. Now, a lot.
Welcome.
And they used to put their faces.
Thanks for joining the Rachel, thanks for joining the most important class for tonight, not because I'm giving it,
Okay.
but because the laws are the most important, so we could implement it properly. So we're gonna have some laws and customs. So menorah lighting, who is responsible to light the menorah? So it's men. Men are primarily responsible. They're obligated to light the menorah. Boys,
Men are
Yeah.
primarily irresponsible.
yeah, that's why they have to have the women. Yeah. And the women in their life, you know, they make sure that they do it, you know. So they're given the responsibility, but the women make sure that it's implemented. So the boys under bar mitzvah are also supposed to do it from an early age, obviously to get trained in, you know. But women are also obligated not to light it per se, because if there's a man in the house that's lighting it, their mitzvah is fulfilled through the man. So you know, they should be present and say amen to the blessings. But if they're not, the man of the house could have them in mind, and that's good enough. If a woman does have to do the mitzvah of menorah on her own because of different circumstances. For example, if she's not married, and she's usually she's in her father's house, but let's say she's in seminary, she's with her friends, let's say in a hotel or whatever. In such a case, she does have to go and light the menorah. So she in the hotel and wherever she may find herself, that's very appropriate to the law is that she has to light the menorah with the blessings on the as we'll go through that coming up. But let's say a woman remains home and her husband's out of town, or let's say she goes to, for example, her sister's house and her husband is out of town or not with her, whatever, or her husband is another time zone, let's say. So what happens in that case? So she so in her brother-in-law could have her in mind, and a good thing to do is to give him a few dollars towards the mitzvah. So if she's in such a situation where her brother-in-law could have her in mind, then that's the best scenario. She doesn't have to do anything besides give him, $1, $2, whatever it is, a few, just to show that she's a part of it. But going back to what we said before, if she's in a place where there's no man over there lighting menorah, she has to obviously go. If it's the two sisters together and both of their husbands are on a boys trip somewhere or whatever, they'll figure it out between each other. Yes.
The man has to light it on the first night. What about the other night?
All nights, it's the same. The law is the same. Yeah, that the man of the house lights it. The boys also join in. They have their own menorahs from as young age as you could. That's not too dangerous. And they have in mind the women of the house. But in a case where the women are not at home and they're in a hotel or whatever, in those cases, then they light it on their own. And it's preferable if the woman is there while the menorah is being lit in the house. But if she's not there, he could have her in mind, and they move forward. Yes.
You say girls don't like the menorah, only the boys?
So that's, yeah, they're allowed to, but they don't have to. They don't have the obligation. When their husband or their father does it, they don't need to do it. Yeah. Yeah.
Boys say the bracha?
The boys say the bracha, yes. Yeah. Because they're just like any other mitzvah, any kid does the full bracha for everything because they're practicing to do it for when they're older. They know how to do it easily without, This is the preferred way, but she could, yeah.
If one is a guest in somebody else's home, does one have to also light the menorah?
If a man is a guest in someone else's home, or they go as a family, yeah, it's preferable that they do it and they light and they have their family in mind, and wherever they're staying, that
Thank you, Rob.
Okay, so moving right along. So yes, it's the opposite. A woman, it comes from such a high level, such a high place that she doesn't need to, she could be included in the mitzvah because she has a lot of more important things to do. Okay. Yes.
Heard at one point, and I could be wrong, that Rebbe Schneerson, decreed 1 year that everybody should like.
I don't recall such a thing, but we could look into it. Yeah, I'll look into it. Okay, so where do we light the menorah? One must light the menorah where they usually eat and sleep. So their home, their original place where they start off their day. They get up in the morning. That's where they go, and they light the menorah. And what if they're away from home? Like we mentioned, if they're in a hotel and so on. So of course they light it over there if they're not going to return that night. But if they're actually planning on returning that night, so you go and light it home. If you're going out for dinner, you still light it at home. Most of the time you light it at home. unless you're you're at a lodging place, whatever, you didn't even plan on going home, but then you decided to, you were gonna stay, you weren't sure, maybe, back and forth, and then you decided to stay, so then you stay and you light the menorah there. Obviously, you're not gonna go home. But if you knew that you're gonna go home at 10 o'clock, whatever, it's better to light it at home.
You can light only up until midnight?
So you could light till, really, technically, you could light till early in the morning, but someone has to be up with you. So that's what we're gonna get to.
Visiting a friend's house.
So if you're visiting a friend's house, but you're staying there overnight, or you're not staying there overnight. If you're staying there overnight, then you light over there at your friend's house. But if you're not staying there overnight, you light at home. Yeah. Yeah, it's important to light at home. That's the most, sometimes in the mall, you see people lighting and whatever, that they're not, they don't fulfill their obligation there, right? So we'll get there. So,
Chabad rabbis, when they're in front of a leader, let's say president of the country, they don't light the Chanukah candle unless it's absolutely necessary. Like, let's say they light it. They won't light it just to show the Hanukkah candle. They'll light
so we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. This is coming up. So during Hanukkah, you should avoid crossing the international date line, because then you're having problems if you cross over, just like the Sfira, for example. Also, you mess up the counting and which day are you. So if you really, really need to, then you have to ask a Rav, someone that specializes in it, a rabbi that specializes in the laws. So placement of the menorah. So the best place to put the menorah, this is according to Chabad custom, is in the doorway across from the mezuzah, where you eat. So the best is near the dining room somewhere. Could be near the kitchen or living room, but preferably by the dining room. And it should be in the actual doorway. So you put, a chair there. It's supposed to be actually the chair, excuse me. The chair is supposed to be 3 tfachim off the ground, which is it's 24 centimeters off the ground, so that most Canadians understand. But for whoever's listening that doesn't understand, it's about 9.4 inches off the ground. And the highest it should be,
The menorah?
Yeah, the menorah. Yeah, the menorah. So that's why most Chabad people use a chair. And if not, you use like a shorter table. And but
9.4 inches is nothing. It's like this.
Yeah. That's why we use a chair. Like
A stool.
Yeah, a stool. No, it could be higher. It could be up to 80 centimeters, which is 31 inches. Yeah, the lowest. Sorry, what did I say? I said the height. Oh, okay. Yeah, the lowest
Okay.
should
I
be
didn't realize.
3 handbreadths, which is 3 tfachim, up to 10 tfachim off the ground. So usually we use a chair.
80 centimeters, the same as 20 cubits, what they say in the Talmud.
No, that's for a public menorah.
Oh.
So I don't know. That's 80 centimeters is 10 tfachim. So that's that's inside, indoors is between 3 tfachim to 10 tfachim. So that's between 9.4 inches to 31.5 inches. So around there, it should be in that range. So when multiple people use light the menorah, so best to make it in a way, arrange it in a way that it's you could see that this is one menorah, this is another menorah. Sometimes we improvise, we don't have a menorah, so we use like something else, and it could look like that it's one menorah. So we have to make sure that everyone that would see the menorah would know that it's two different menorahs, 5 different menorahs, whatever the case may be. So So the design of the menorah. So the Rebbe strongly encouraged it to be diagonal, not rounded, the menorah, but diagonal. Like the Rambam, if you look at the diagram, you could Google it. There's the diagram of the, I should have put it, Chaya made this, I should have told her to put it over here. But the diagram of that it goes diagonal like this, the branches, not rounded. That's the preferable way, according to the Rebbe. The Rebbe strongly encouraged that. And if you can't, for whatever reason, it should be square. And if you can't have that, you could also have, those menorahs that don't have any branches. So that's also very good. So, oh, we went too quick. So the preparation of the menorah is important to do as early as possible. Whenever so you come home, let's say whatever time it is, you get it all ready. First night it's easy, one candle, but then the as the days go on, it takes a little longer. So the preparation should be done a little before, especially we'll get there. And the shamish, the one that lights all the other candles, that one goes higher than the others. So because we don't take any light from the candles itself, from the menorah candles, so it's important to have the shamish. You could have multiple menorahs, one shamish, if they're in the same area. If they're different areas, then you figure out where to put them.
That's why you're saying that you could have seven different menorah with one shamash.
Only
Yes.
one that lights all of them?
Yes, yeah. Technically, yeah. I mean, we don't, technically that's very, yeah, it's not a problem at all. Could use one shamash between everyone, but most people, they have their own. It's exactly, yeah. And the shamash is preferable to be made out of beeswax, but you could use any type of candle. And the wicks is preferable to make out of cotton or linen. If you don't have either of those, you could use pretty much anything. But it's preferable cotton or linen. And the ideal fuel to use is olive oil. Why? Because it was used in the base of Mikdash. So that's the ideal thing to use. But if not, there's a lot of different other types of things that you could use. Candles are the main, usually after that. And how long do you have to light it for? You have to have a candle or the oil that lasts preferably 50 minutes. So you're supposed to light the menorah between Mincha and Ma'ariv. That's the preferred time. So you daven Mincha, it's still a little light outside. And that's a good time to light the menorah. That's usually around 50 minutes, but that's the best time because you want the candle to last a half hour after the 3 stars. When the 3 stars come out, so you want it to last a half hour after that. So it's about 50 minutes. Today there's the big ones. They last 3-4 hours. Mine lasts, sometimes I see it in the morning still because I have the big, that lasts like 9 hours or whatever. But the minimum should be 50 minutes.
And the mitzvah is only when night falls. That's when you're doing actually the mitzvah.
No, we're gonna get there, but yeah, the mitzvah could be the best time to do it is right before nightfall, right between Mincha and Ma'ariv. So it's right after sundown, but not still there's the 3 stars didn't come out. So that's the best time to do it. But if you're on Mivtzayim, for example, you're going to your neighbors, you're going to a hospital, bringing people the mitzvah. So then you do it later. Certain things come before, doing it exactly that time. But that's the preferred time if you can pull it off.
But also based on what you said, if we have a workplace, we don't need to do it at the workplace because it's at home there.
Right. So if you're, we're going to get there about the shul and outside, but the workplace is similar. You could light it over there, in a way of Persume Nisa, but you still have to do it at home. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. So like we said, the ideal time is after sunset, but between Mincha and Ma'ariv, right?
What if you're working during these hours?
So then you do it the first possible time. If you're working then and you come home later, so you do it the first possible time. So technically, you could light until sundown. Sorry, all night. Sorry, yeah, till dawn. That's what I meant. Sorry. Technically, you could do it from actually Plaga Mincha, which is like these days it's around in Montreal, it's around 3:20, 3:30. Technically, if you're not gonna be able to do it later, you're not gonna be able to you're catching a flight or something, so you could do it like a little earlier, after Plaga Mincha, and until dawn. That's technically, but somebody has to be up with you. So if you come home 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning, and whatever, for whatever reason, you should wake somebody up and light the menorah with them.
What if you live alone?
If you live alone, it's a good question. You hopefully will work it out in a better time, like when people are anyways up till around 10 o'clock. But if you live alone, you really have to schedule it in on time. If not, you have to wake up a neighbor or something. A Jewish neighbor, yeah.
Good luck.
Or do it earlier. If you know you're going to be home late, you have to figure it out. You have to slot it in.
Can you Zoom?
No, you can Zoom.
I always like by myself unless I invite people.
But you do it before 10 o'clock. You're supposed to do it as early as possible. Yeah. But 10 o'clock starts getting problematic when people are off the streets. That's what the Gemara says. The Talmud tells us that when people are away, off the streets, then it's problematic. So then you have to, but till then you could do it on your own, till around 10, maybe even 11. If you have somebody up with you. After 10, 11 o'clock, it's you can't really do it on your own. You have to.
What's the reason for it?
Because it's a nest that we're trying to it's Persume Nisa, getting the word out there. It's to publicize, exactly. That's the word, to publicize the miracle. So if no one's there to witness it, it's yeah.
Okay.
Unless it's in your agenda to explain, but I think it's important to remind everybody how to load the camera and how to light the camera.
Right, yes.
Go through the.
Yeah. We're gonna go there. We're gonna get there.
Rabbi Mindy?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's another way to do it. Everyone has their different customs, so you could do that if that's your custom, no problem. You could put in your window. That's
Just keep the window closed, keep away from that, and have someone watch it.
Yeah, be
Because
careful.
We had too many fires where people died because they were stupid.
Yeah, so definitely being careful is important, but yeah.
News.
Mivtzayim. If you're going on Mivtzayim,
No.
so davening and going on Mivtzayim takes precedence over, lighting candles in the exact time that we spoke about, right after Mincha. So davening with a minyan, obviously we know is important, and going on Mivtzayim, like to spread the light, to go to people that we know, let's say for, exactly that time, we know that if we go to old age home, we're going to be able to spread light, get a lot of other people to light the candles and so on, and bring joy to their Yom Tiv. So then that takes precedence. Obviously, we're going to bring light to others, and then we'll go home a little later, and we won't do it in exact right time, so to speak. But that's important. Yes. Okay. So how do we light? So we don't wear Shabbos clothes, but we wear, the men, a hat, a jacket, a gartel, because it's a mitzvah. When we do a mitzvah, we do it in the proper way. And what's the procedure? So we light with let's say a match or someone lit before us. You can light from their shamish, but not from their candles. We light the shamish, and we hold it in our dominant hand, usually the right hand, but some people the left hand, and we recite the bracha. On the first night, how many brachas do we say? 3. There's the 2 brachas that we say all the other nights, and the third one is Shechianu. Exactly. So we do the 3 brachas on the first night, and we stand unsupported. I mean, if you need support, by all means, but if one doesn't need support, you stand up straight, upright, like kind of like when you're davening the Amida, that you're not being supported by anything. And if someone does sit for whatever reason, they are still yaitze, they still fulfill their obligation, but the preferred way is to stand. So we light the candles from left to right. So the first night is the extreme right, and then we go to we do the left one to that. So we light first the new one, and the third night we also light the new edition. Every time it's a new edition, back to the right hand side. That's the way we light the menorah. From left to right. The newest is on the left. Yeah. And so the first night, the far right, then left to right, and you just keep going. Every night you add another one. We add light every night. We're always adding light to our lives.
My father came home one day and said he had synagogue, and he's Sephardic, so maybe they have a different, maybe Sephardim.
We're not gonna have time. Sorry. Guys, I'm gonna no more questions because I think I prepared too much. So we'll do questions at the end. So if the menorah needs to be lit and it's like you can't get it for whatever reason, you're allowed to move the menorah to light it, and you should move it back. Wherever you situated it in the beginning, that's where you have to leave it. It's preferable to leave it over there. And then obviously after we light it, whichever night it is, whether we said the 3 brachas or the 2 brachas on the following nights, we sing Haneir Salalu, and there's different traditions, so everyone sings whatever their tradition is. What time is it? Just I don't have the time here for whatever reason. Oh, okay. Okay. So the duration, like we said, we have to light it for 50 minutes or 30 minutes after Tzeisach Kechavim, which is the 3 stars. When we see the 3 stars, that's the time where, for example, Shabbos goes out. It's the same time. So that's when the 30 minutes begin. So any time before that is not counted the 30 minutes. But if you light on a later time, you should also make sure that there's for sure that 30 minutes, but preferable is the 50 minutes. So we said we don't use, what if there's no stars? Yeah, if it's cloudy, it could get a little complicated, but you look, thank God we have the internet. We could look when it says Hakechavim, when does the first stars come out, and it will give us the time. Chabad.org. Yeah. So we can't use, we mentioned it before, but we can't use any of the lights for anything besides the shamish, the light that we used, Yeah, you can't benefit in any way from the other candles, the menorah candles. So we have to make sure of that. So that's why we keep the room lit as well as possible. So if there's good lighting, you make sure it's all the way on, not dimmed, just so we don't get any benefit. Because it's the mitzvah that itself that we're benefiting from. We don't want to that's the mitzvah. The mitzvah is the important part, and we don't want to benefit from this light. This light is meant for the mitzvah itself, so we don't want to derive benefit.
We did the opposite. We turned the lights down.
Right.
So all we see is the Hanukkah light.
Right, but you had the shamish, you had the one that lit all the other ones. So if you have that, it's okay, but it's better to have a well-lit room. So the best thing to do when we're sitting over there, because after you light, you're supposed to sit there and watch the candles for a half hour till the first stars. So what's the best thing to do then? Is to study Torah or talk about farbring, about, with the family, about Chanukah, about all the great things that we could learn. And another thing, every night we have, every time we're preparing the candles, we have leftovers from the night before. So there's two things that we could do. Either put a brand new wick, or we could try to reuse the wick from the night before. So the previous Rebbe was, I don't know the previous Rebbe actually, I think that's coming up, was into that. Oh, that's in one of them. But anyway, so the important thing is not to throw out any of the leftover, whether it's the wicks or the oil, whatever was used for the mitzvah, you put into some type of bucket, and the last day on Zois Chanukah we burn it, so we don't derive anything from it, and it's used for a mitzvah, so we don't want it to throw it out. So in the synagogue, every synagogue we light the menorah. Where do we light the menorah? It's on the southern wall. So we face east, so that's on the right. And the menorah goes east and west, the candle. So the right candle is the first one that gets lit, just like in all other scenarios. And when do we light the menorah in the shul? It's typically after mincha, but mincha could be davened earlier than plag mincha. It could be it could be davened at chatzais. So that's 12 or 1 o'clock, depends what time of the year. So this time of the year, I think it's more like 1. But that is so you can't light the menorah with a bracha until 3:20, 3:30. So best to daven mincha later and light the menorah with a bracha, because otherwise you're supposed to light the menorah but without a bracha if it's before plag mincha. No, so in a shul, whenever anyone's there, the whole time it should be, if it's safe. Sometimes there's an area where it's not safe, but when there's people around, it should be lit. But only after plag mincha you light it with a blessing. Before, if it's during Shachris, for example, everyone's around here, we will still light the menorah, but that's without a blessing. Only after plag mincha do we light the menorah with a blessing.
Earliest mincha today was 12:16.
Huh?
Earliest mincha today.
Oh, right. Yeah, because it's a summer. So the winter. In the winter, it's earlier. In the summer, it's more like 1:15, 1:30. Exactly. So yeah, you could daven mincha earlier than plag mincha at 12:16, but you cannot say the bracha on the menorah in shul or anywhere for that matter, and only after plag mincha, which is around 3:20, 3:30. So of course, the first night you make a bracha with all the 3 blessings, and if someone goes home and there's nobody there for them to fill the mitzvah for, everyone still has to go home and do them and light the menorah at home. No one fulfills the mitzvah in shul, even the one that's lighting. But the one that's lighting, if he says Shechianu on the first night, he still has to say the Shechianu if he's having people in mind at home. But if he goes home and there's nobody home and he's doing it on his own, he does not repeat the Shechianu. So it's important, obviously, to remind everyone when they're in shul that they're not fulfilling the mitzvah. So when do we do it in shul? We do it right before Aleinu. Aleinu is coming, so we have the best is if the menorah is already prepared, so no one's getting distracted during davening. And then when Aleinu comes, before Aleinu, someone's whoever is appointed, and it shouldn't be an oval, somebody that is in the 12 months of especially morning of especially the first night. Yeah. Okay. Now, lighting in the menorah in public. So that's called Persume Nisa, being to get the nes, to publicize the nes, the miracle. Persume Nisa is to publicize the miracle. So that could be the menorah could be lit anywhere. It should be lit in a place where it won't be vandalized and it won't go out by the winds or whatever. It should be strategically placed. And the flames should not be higher than 20 amos. 20 amos is 9.6 meters. And I think it's 31 feet, I believe. Yeah.
Themselves?
The flames itself, yeah. So the menorah, the flames itself should not be one more. This is not the right time?
31.
7:30 is supposed to finish.
Oh. What time did I start? What time did I start?
Oh, 7:30. Anyway.
No, he didn't start at 7.
Okay. Okay.
We're still sleep here tonight.
And of course, like the shul, no one fulfills the mitzvah from doing it outside in the public. You have to still do it at home. So mivtzayim, I'm just going to run through it very quickly, no questions. Everyone has to ensure that everyone else around them has menorahs to light. So your neighbors, anyone you know in the city, across the globe, if you could influence them to light the menorah, very important. And it's important, of course, to give tzedakah, and if you're giving out food, to make sure everyone says a blessing on it. And the special prayers, we have to add the Al Hanisim to Shmona Esrei and to benching, and we recite the full Hallel in davening right after Shmona Esrei. We do not say Tachnun during Chanukah. So Tachnun is omitted from Mincha before the Mincha on Erev Chanukah. Guys, you can take pictures of the slides, or I can send it to you later if you need it.
We're gonna send it later.
We're gonna send it, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's important
Everybody will-
to increase in giving tzedakah, eating latkes, anything with oil, donuts, dairy. Anyone know why there's a custom to eat dairy? Huh? What? No, because Yehudis, the story with Yehudis, that she killed the general, the Syrian Greek general, and that was allegedly during Chanukah. So we also have, and she fed him milchik. So yeah. So Chanukah geld, it's very important to give out Chanukah geld to your spouse, your kids.
Not presents.
Not gifts. Gifts, if you do give gifts, it's not so much connected to Chanukah. So it's important. It's an important not to give it before Shabbos or on Shabbos, and unless it's going to be used on Shabbos, but that's better not to, obviously. And okay, yeah, we're done. Okay, we're done.
Thank you. Beautiful. All right. Now we have we have. Want to use this?
Sure.
Okay. Shayna, Mendel's wife, is now going to share with us. Because, yeah. Hold on. No. Oh, she's not using that at all, and.
The light was still showing in there.
Huh?
If I go over.
No, metal go on the
Fine.
table. It's one, two. It's only two.
Where's my phone number?
Is this your? Second channel, second channel. Oh, let's check right here. 3678.
Oh, okay.
Caribbean connection with some British.
Okay, yeah, very good.
Okay.
Probably for a very small.
Ready?
Yeah.
Wow.
All right, folks.
Okay. I actually would love some water, thank you. I never did on Zoom, so
No, you're speaking to the crowd.
really,
They don't.
I'm
this
speaking to
doesn't
myself.
exist. This
Okay,
doesn't exist.
okay.
All right, folks.
Never heard of the Zoomies?
What, I'm not a Zoomie, sorry.
Things that dogs and kids have. Something about what I did, they'll make you.
Oh, no. Oh, really? I know all about it. I just didn't know it's called Zoomies.
Would you like some more?
Mendel's getting, thank you. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Good evening. So nice to see everybody.
Why are you so late?
Why am I? Wow. Thank you so much. Wow.
It's not your fault.
I know, so it's okay. I have a thicker skin than that, don't worry. Thank you. Okay. I don't have a lot of time since we're running a little late, so I'm gonna dive right in. So what is hope? What's hope? You're his niece, for starters. But hope is one of the most powerful forces in the emotional spectrum. It's one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves. We could give our friends who are going through a hard time. And it's something that Hashem gave us that helps us get through things, right? At least, you know, we can help our friends get through things when we encourage them. We'll get to the other side. And it's something very important for us to hold on to. But have you ever been trapped in a place where it's so dark and you're trapped in such a dark place spiritually that you feel like there's no way to come back? You're low, it's dark. You're like, how am I going to climb out of this? Where's the hope? How do I have hope in a time when things are so dark? I am messing with your webcam, sorry. It's right in my face. Maybe not, you're taller than me.
Here,
Okay, sorry. We don't have to do online.
Use a
I
phone.
like this crowd.
Yeah, everybody will be very upset,
I don't know about that, but.
except for you. There you go.
Oh, wow. Oh my God. Okay.
What do you want to tell us though?
Seriously. No, it's actually better. I couldn't see anybody before. Okay. So have you ever been in that place where it really is very dark and it's really hard to climb out and to have hope and to see, you know, how can I come out of this? And we have questions and we're just left feeling very hopeless. And, you know, if you've been around for long enough, you know, like the rabbis always say, there's always, you can always return. You can always come back. But it kind of feels a little redundant. And, you know, it's like, is there really a way that if we're in a really dark place spiritually, that we can come back? It's a hard thing to wrap our heads around. And it's a hard thing to actually practically do, you know, to climb out of a dark place like that. And so what is the actual logic when the rabbis say this? What's the logic behind it, claiming that it is possible to, in fact, climb out of a dark place? So I have a little secret for you.
It's no longer a secret.
Little secret that the whole world is going to know now on the internet. But there is, in fact, a practical and attainable way, and within everybody's grasp, to come out of a dark place. And we actually can learn this from the story of Chanukah. And it's really, honestly, I read this class and I was like,
whoa, it's actually, it's very practical and it makes it very attainable. And it really gives you hope that there is always, 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 always hope. And you're always able to return from the darkest of places. So let's start by just familiar. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the story of Chanukah. It's a very, popular one. But let's just recap it really quickly. So in the 2nd century BCE, the land of Israel was controlled by the Syrian Greeks. And what did the Syrian Greeks do? They instituted very, very harsh decrees against the Jewish people and specifically their faith. What happened? An extremely outnumbered and outarmed group of Jewish men, very brave, very courageous, won a miraculous victory against the very strong and powerful Syrian Greek army. And they drove them out of Israel and they retook control over the Holy Temple. One of the central temple services was the daily kindling of the menorah, of the 7-pronged candelabra. That they would light it every day in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Holy Temple, but it could only be prepared with a specially prepared oil. It was like a holy oil that you could only use that to light the menorah. Now, what did the Greeks do? They went into the Holy Temple. As you, I'm sure, all know this part of the story, is they ravaged the Holy Temple. They defiled, they desecrated, they destroyed whatever was inside of the Beis Hamikdash. What happened when the Jews retook control of the Holy Temple? They went inside the Holy Temple and they found, amongst all of the chaos and the sadness and the devastation, they found one small cruse of oil. But technically, this would only last for one day. What happened? We all know the oil lasted for 8 days until the Kohanim were able to prepare new oil. It took 8 days to prepare the new oil to start kindling the menorah again. So the story of Chanukah, this amazing story that we all know, is recorded in many places. Antiochus, the king at the time, recorded it. He records both miracles. He records the military victory. He records the miracle of the oil in detail, actually. But as Jews, we look towards our primary Jewish writings and of tradition, the Talmud. And we're going to see how the Talmud recounts the tale of Chanukah. And I'm actually going to read it straight because the Talmud writes it best. What is Chanukah? The Talmud says, on the 25th of Kislev, the days of Chanukah are 8. One may not eulogize on them and one may not fast on them. What is the reason? When the Greeks entered the temple, they defiled all the oils that were in the temple by touching them. And when the Hashmonaim monarchy overcame them and emerged victorious over them, they searched and found only one cruse of oil with the seal of the high priest, undisturbed by the Greeks. There was only enough oil to light the menorah for one day. And a miracle occurred, and they lit the menorah from it for 8 days. The next year, the sages instituted those days and made them holidays with recitation of Hallel and special thanksgivings and prayer and blessings. So you see, the Talmud recounts this tale, but I don't know if any of you noticed, the Talmud basically glosses over the military miracle. The fact that the Maccabees won over the Greeks, barely a mention. I don't even know if it's mentioned at all. It just talks in detail about the miracle of the oil lasting for 8 days. So very weird, very strange. That miracle was pretty unbelievable of the Maccabees winning over the Greeks. So Maimonides, who was one of the primary explainers of the Talmud, Maimonides, helps us understand why this is. So if you remember when I just read the Talmud, the Talmud started with a question: what is Chanukah? So the Talmud's question, what is Chanukah, actually means, what miracle was it instituted to commemorate? Okay, so according to Maimonides, the Talmud's question of what is Chanukah is a halachic question rather than like a historical one. It's not like, the sages all knew what happened. The Talmud wasn't retelling the story for fun and for historical purposes. It was a halachic question. It was like, why are we celebrating Chanukah? For what reason? So the Talmud is figuring out which of the two miracles we are commemorating Chanukah for. Was it the military victory Or was it because of the miracle of the oil that lasted for 8 days? So we see it's very obvious now that the answer is that the Talmud is saying, he glosses over I don't think he mentions it at all, the military miracle, and that it's because we celebrate Hanukkah because the oil lasted for 8 days. Okay, so now we have a question on a question as good Jews. So the war between the Maccabees and the Greeks, when the Maccabees won over the Greeks, was for the Jews' survival, their physical survival. Like if it was life or death, you know? And it's a very significant point in Jewish history. You know, it was a matter of our annihilation. Now, the small jug of oil seems like it was an open miracle and it was amazing, but it seems a little less significant than this military victory. It doesn't have an impact on our survival, you know, and our existence even. So why is this secondary miracle of the oil the focus of Hanukkah? Why is the Talmud saying that we celebrate Hanukkah because of the oil? Okay. So the Mittler Rebbe, Rabbi Dov Ber of Lubavitch, says like this: logically, it seems that the military victory of the many into the hands of the many into the hands of the few, the strong into the hands of the weak, which, by the way, is said, he's quoting the Va'al Hanisim prayer that we say every day of Hanukkah, okay, was the primary victory. It seems that this military victory was the big one, and the miracle of the oil was secondary. But Hanukkah is observed, now here is interesting, Hanukkah is observed on the 25th of Kislev, when the miracle of the oil occurred, and not on the 24th of Kislev, when the military victory took place. So why are we giving primacy to the seemingly secondary miracle? And why is the primary miracle that we think is the primary miracle, the military miracle, being relegated to second place and going to the bottom? And especially if the military miracle, you know, the miracle of the oil was amazing. It was a great miracle. But what about remembering the threat of assimilation, of the war, the survival of the Jewish people? And the Maccabees, they had so much courage. They risked their lives, the Mesiras Nefesh they had to go and fight the Syrian Greeks when they thought, like, they didn't think they were going to win. I mean, it was like a huge miracle. So why is that second place? Why is it taking second place here? So let's go back a little bit in time for a little context, like people like to say these days, a little context. Okay, so before this physical war with the Maccabees, there was actually an ideological war. What was the ideological war? It was a battle of diametrically opposed worldviews, okay? Now let's delve into this war so we can understand a little bit why we placed emphasis on the miracle of the oil. So the Jewish people have long been known for their intellect. Stereotype or not, it's, you know, the truth. And Judaism values the power of human intelligence, correct? You know, like it's appreciated on many levels and whatever. But Judaism doesn't only value our human intellect. Judaism recognizes that there is something way beyond human intellect. It's not just about what's in our human mind and what we can understand. We understand that there is something greater than our minds. There's a higher power, and there's a value beyond our intellect. And when we understand there's a higher power, our faith, when we're tested and all logic fails, at least we have our faith. And that's what keeps us going, because we know that it's not just about our brains, you know? So now that we have that context, we have two kind of mitzvahs in the Torah, okay? We have the first one that's called mishpatim. The mishpatim are mitzvahs that make logical sense. There are things that, like, don't kill, don't steal, don't commit adultery, like all the things that are like, okay, civilized society, I'll do it, fine, it makes sense. Then there's another kind of mitzvah called chukim. Chukim are the mitzvahs that are completely irrational. They make no sense. There's no reason. We do it because God said so. I'm sorry if I'm talking fast because someone's after me. I feel like I don't have so much time. So chukim are the mitzvahs that are not rational. So and they go beyond human comprehension, correct? And we do them because God said so. So regarding the chukim, there's always been, regarding this the mitzvahs that we can't understand, there's always been like an internal struggle throughout the generations, you know, even now, of course now, but like even in the past when there's been many tzaddikim, there's always been an internal struggle to like give up our personal reasoning and give ourselves to the higher power and just say, I'm going to do it because Hashem says. This has always been a struggle for us, correct? I mean, I would imagine, I'm told for myself, but anyway, this has always been a thing. But on top of that, many people also feel the external struggle. What's the external struggle? Is that people around us have always, over the generations, have derided, judged, and made fun of and challenged our irrational customs and our rituals that made no sense. And, you know, people have shame and fear and feel a little funny about it because there's no way to defend it, in quotes. You know, it's like, this is what God told us, and not everyone accepts that, you know? So this is always been a struggle, an internal struggle, and we have the external struggle, okay? Now, Maimonides says it very nicely. A person's natural inclination confronts them concerning the chukim, and the nations of the world challenge them as well. For example, the prohibition of the meat of a pig, milk and meat, the calf whose neck is broken, the red heifer, and the goat sent tazalzel. To what degree did King David suffer because of the heretics and the idolaters who would issue challenges concerning the decrees? As long as they would pursue him with false retorts that they would arrange according to humanity's limited knowledge, he would increase his clinging to the Torah. As the verse states, willful transgressors have stacked falsehoods against me, but I guard your precepts with a full heart. He just shut it all out. And the more they harassed him, the stronger he was, you know? So a lot to learn from King Shlomo. Okay, now now we see, sorry, did I say, what did I say, King Shlomo? Sorry, King David, thank you. So now that we have this, you know, now we see this prime example of being judged and being derided and being challenged for our chukim, for our mitzvahs that we're not rational. We're the war with the Greeks. How? The Greeks were not like our other enemies and our other adversaries throughout the years. The Greeks, our other enemies, they wanted to annihilate us, just kill everybody out. You know, like they just didn't want us to exist anymore. But the Greeks, they were okay with us having us around, you know, like we contributed to society, we were smart, we were cultured, and they were like cool with it, you know? And they were ready to tolerate our lifestyle. And they were even okay to like a certain extent of some religious things. But what really bothered them? The chukim. The mitzvahs that were a higher power. We did them because God said so. They were spiritual. They had nothing, there was no rational explanation. And this, they could not tolerate. They could not wrap their head around. And they just, no, we can't. Honoring your parents, perfect, fine, amazing. Giving charity, go for it. Not a problem. But anything else that was performed for no reason other than God said so, no, nisht, absolutely not. Exactly. Chukim, all the chukim. It actually eventually kind of just grew and grew. Like first they were unaccepting of those, but then eventually they tried to get rid of everything. So the Greeks' war, like the Frierdiker Rebbe says, the Greeks' war was a spiritual one. They did not wish to physically harm the Jews. Rather, their primary objective was to make them forget that the Torah is Hashem's, is God's, and that the mitzvahs are God's will. So they didn't have a problem with the Torah as an intellectual exercise. To be sure, the Greeks were highly sophisticated people and recognized the brilliance of the Torah. However, they opposed the notion that it was God's Torah, a holy Torah. Against this is what they battled. And in the beginning, there was no war. There was no bloodshed. Beginning, it was like slow. The Greeks slowly outlawed little things, you know, like observance of certain mitzvahs, like a bris, a circumcision, or, you know, things that didn't make so much sense. But eventually, it evolved. And the Greeks started banning any Jewish practice. And eventually, the mounting tension, because the Jews self-sacrifice to observe all the mitzvahs anyways, really started to bother the Greeks. And eventually it erupted into armed conflict. So it did not initially start that way, and it was not the Greeks' intention, but that's what evolved. But that was never the plan. So when the Greeks had had enough of the Jews and their shtick, they realized that their devotion to Hashem was like resolute and it was not going anywhere. This is when the Greeks started to use more unusual forms of like dominance and punishment. What happened was that they used actually something called the act of contamination. What did they do? According to the Talmud, as we know in the story, they deliberately went into the Holy Temple, and which was a revered, they knew that it was, to the Jews, it was a revered and sacred place, and their aim was to intentionally pollute it. And unlike the Romans, by the way, who they didn't want to burn down they burnt down the temple. They like flattened it to the ground. But the Greeks, they're like, oh, it's a beautiful, magnificent building, the work of art. I don't want to destroy it. We just want to take God out of it. So how did they do that? They went in and they contaminated and made it unfit for holiness and spirituality. And like it says actually in, I'm sure many of you know Mao's Sor, that you sing on Chanukah by the menorah. So Mao's Sor, I didn't know this, but it's actually a liturgical poem written in 13th century Germany. I found that interesting. Yeah. So it says in Mao's Sor, the Greeks gathered against me in the days of the Hashmonaim. They broke down the walls of my towers and defiled all the oils. The Greeks didn't just stop at contaminating the temple. They also needed to contaminate the oil. They didn't just pour it out. They didn't crack the bottles because it's valuable. Oil, they knew, they valued the fact that it was oil. It's like functional and whatever, but they just touched the bottle or they broke the seal. So they knew that once they did that, the Jews wouldn't be able to use it for holy reasons. So we see here we'll see soon, but the menorah in the temple was actually not just like a chandelier, a candelabra to light up the Beis Hamikdash. It didn't need the light of the menorah. The sages actually say they didn't need light at all. It was the candelabra was there solely it was there solely because it was a beacon of spiritual and godly light. It was there just as a testimony to the divine energy in the world that's in the world and within us. Like it was really symbolic for Hashem's presence, Hashem's divine energy. It wasn't because, the Kohanim were going to trip over each other at night, it wasn't for light. It was for the spiritual light. And the Greeks knew this. Now, the Talmud says, the menorah served as testimony to humankind that the divine presence rests among Israel. Now, the menorah represented holiness and light, and this made the Greeks mad. Okay, the contempt for the spiritual light and the divine energy was at like the very heart of their war with the Jewish people. And the courage of the Maccabees when they embarked on a battle, it wasn't just for a physical victory, but it was for the essence of Judaism. They were fighting for their Judaism. It wasn't for their lives. It was to save, the respect for Hashem, the spirituality, so that Greeks could not stamp out God out of the Torah. It was for Judaism itself. And ultimately, when they came out victorious, it was so much more about than a physical victory. It wasn't like, oh, we're alive, It wasn't about that. And when the oil burned for 8 days, it was the spirit and life of Judaism that was shining in the flames. It was like such an incredible spiritual victory that was like, was not a physical victory, it was a spiritual victory. Like they showed the Greeks that there's no way. Like Hashem is, sorry.
Which oil did they use though? If they desecrated all the oil.
They found the one cruse of oil that was untouched. That was the miracle.
How did they know it was untouched?
It had the seal of the Kohanim on it.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was like hidden, That was the miracle. But it was really enough for 1 day, and it lasted for 8. So, it is this deeper spiritual miracle that the Maccabees not only won a physical victory, but also a spiritual victory, is what the menorah symbolizes. Is that far from being a side miracle, the miracle of the oil actually embodies the essence of our struggle against the Greeks, that fight against the Greeks. What's that smoke, Rachel?
Oh, no.
Oh, that's easy. Okay. Now, the Rabbi Dober Lubavitch says, I'm going to read it because he says it best. The Greeks, am I late? Am I okay? Okay. Okay. The Greeks wanted to make the Jews forget about the divine aspect of the Torah. They did not want to harm them physically. Therefore, they deliberately contaminated the oil in the temple, for the oil represents the divine light of the Torah. Consequently, the miracle of the oil, which was the answer to the Greeks' primary scheme, is the primary miracle of Chanukah. And the military victory, the answer to the physical conflict that the Greeks never intended, is secondary. So we have one question, one dangling question. So if the miracle of oil was the main miracle, then does that mean that the physical war of the Maccabees doesn't get any recognition? Like, it was still a really great miracle, and the Maccabees, were putting their lives in danger, had Mesiras Nefesh, and they, was a huge miracle. So should we not express gratitude for this miracle as well? It was an open miracle. Maybe it wasn't, as great as the oil miracle, but nonetheless a miracle. So obviously, we know we need to express gratitude for this miracle. And it's just how and when. It's a matter of like, when do we give thanks for what? Okay. So let's begin by looking at the Al Hanisim prayer that we say every day of Hanukkah. We say a prayer. I can't sing it, but the Al Hanisim prayer. So I'm gonna, and in that prayer, that's where we exclusively mention only the military victory. So every day of Hanukkah, we express gratitude for this military victory. And it says like this: you in your abundant mercy, this is the Al Hanisim prayer, stood by them in their times of distress. You defended their cause. You judged their grievances. You avenged them. You delivered the mighty into the hands of the weak, the many into the hands of the few, the defiled people into the hands of the undefiled, the wicked into the hands of the righteous, and insolent sinners into the hands of the diligent students of your Torah. And you made for yourself a great and sanctified name in this world, and for your people, Israel, you performed a great deliverance and redemption unto this day. This is a beautiful expression of thanks for the military victory. And we say it every day of Hanukkah. But now notice, there's no mention of the miracle of the oil. Interesting. Like, what's going on? So how come, like, we can't, like, if this is a great miracle, we mention it every day, why aren't we mentioning the miracle of the oil in it as well, in this very important prayer? So it looks like we just can't make up our minds. Excuse me. It's either we're only interested in the military victory or the miracle of the oil. So why aren't we able to like entertain two things at the same time? So the answer lies in something that we actually spoke about earlier. The physical conflict actually only evolved out of the primary spiritual one, right? We said that it was really a spiritual war, and then came the physical. That the oil lasted for 8 days was actually part of a tremendous revelation that happened at the time of our victory. And it was in a very spiritual time. And that's why the oil burned for 8 days. It was like when they won that physical war, it was they recognized how spiritual it was. And then the oil lasted for 8 days. They were like on a high. It was extremely spiritual time. And when we start reflecting on the incredible miracle of the spiritual victory, and we really actually, like meditate on it and connect with it, we have the appreciation for the physical victory. It gets like a little diminished, okay? And it's not practical necessarily to like have both miracles at the same time. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe actually says in a sicha, in one of his teachings, that when compared with the great spiritual revelation of Hanukkah, which was expressed through the miracle of the oil, the physical military victory becomes insignificant. Therefore, when we wish to commemorate and offer thanks for the physical victory, we cannot simultaneously mention the miracle of the oil. Why? Because it would outshine the physical victory to the extent that it become negligible, because it was so holy and such a spiritual victory that we cannot even wrap our minds around, that the other miracle would become negligible. And we don't want that. We want to mention and we want to highlight both miracles. Therefore, we commemorate the two miracles at different times. We commemorate the miracle of the oil by lighting the Hanukkah candles every night, and we commemorate the military victory with the Baal Hanisim prayer. Now that we know that we thought that the physical victory was the main story of Hanukkah. Now that we learned that it's the oil that was the main story, the spiritual victory is the main story, and the physical victory is a secondary significance. Now, they're both important. They both deserve their time in the limelight, and it's important to commemorate both. Now, we have to learn something, obviously, out of this, because it's a very interesting, like the fact that it was so spiritual at the time, it's a very interesting concept. Now as everything in life, but because the physical miracle was only a byproduct of the spiritual one, the two miracles need to be commemorated independently. Otherwise, one would always outshine the other. And like everything in life, it often starts with the spiritual and then it evolves into the physical. Now, on Hanukkah, what do we employ to represent the essence of Judaism? What's like the obvious thing that we use is light. Fire, candles, right? We use light. This tells us what Judaism is all about. What is Judaism all about? It's about light and the way to access it. Now, the Friedrich Rebbe says it beautifully. Everything spiritual is compared to light because the spiritual realm is entirely removed from physicality. Thus, everything that exists in the spiritual realm is analogous to light. And if this is true of like angels and souls, how much more so it is true of the Torah and mitzvahs. Now, King Solomon, not King David this time, King Solomon says, King Solomon, and this is actually beautiful, and if you come away with anything tonight, it should be this. King Solomon says, Ki ner mitzvah, the Torah are. For a mitzvah is a lamp, and the Torah is light. What's the focus on Hanukkah? The focus on Hanukkah is the menorah, is the light. And the focus on Hanukkah, when the Greeks tried to quash the light of Torah mitzvahs, we focus on the menorah. But we don't just talk about the lights. We don't just like, we actually, like in the Holy Temple, we kindle the lights, right? And with this act, what are we doing? We're remembering the spirit of our Judaism, that our spirit of Judaism is light. The Torah is light. Judaism is light. The mitzvahs we do are actual spiritual light that we're bringing into our lives. And, you know, usually on a day-to-day basis, we don't necessarily see, like when we're doing spiritual things, we don't see the light, right? It's not visible. It's not physical. We don't see it. But that's why on Hanukkah, we express this light in a physical way, and we light the menorah, and we making it loud and clear what Judaism is about. Light. So we're kindling the menorah and we're showing to the world loud and clear, it's spiritual. The Torah is not just like a genius book. It's actually a godly book. It's actually from Hashem, and it's actually spiritual. And so here we have a very clear answer to our opening question, which was, is there a place too dark from which you cannot return? Is there a place so low that we just can't climb out of? Now, this question is based upon the assumption that you have to like go somewhere, you have to climb out of it in order to a brighter place to practice your Judaism and, you know, connect spiritually. But that's not the case, because Judaism and Torah is the actual light. So if you're in a dark place, the very solution to the darkness is bringing the Torah into your life, even small bits of it, because that means you're bringing light into the dark place. So you're lighting, the more Torah you bring into your life, the more light you're bringing into your life. And this is the reason that our sages have always implored us to study Torah, even if we're not practicing or living up to those teachings. Why? Because the light of Torah shines on your soul. It's actually light. And sooner or later, what happens is you're in that dark place, you bring the light of Torah in, and it slowly adds more and more light, and you're slowly lifted out of the darkness. So adding a little bit of Torah is what will make your life literally brighter. And there's a really beautiful letter. Anyway, okay, we might have to skip it, but so we see it's not possible to be too far or too dark to return to Judaism, because Judaism is the light. And Judaism overpowers and wins against any opposing forces represented by darkness. And the moment you're ready to bring in some Judaism into your life and some Torah into your life lights up. Like it's like a lamp, you know? And that is the message of the oil of Hanukkah, of the menorah. There's a beautiful letter here, but I don't have time. But maybe if I could copy it, it's a letter that the Rebbe wrote to Jewish prisoners, and it is super powerful, but it's very long.
Did you send it to us?
I will. You know what? I'll copy it. I'll
Yeah.
send it to you. It's just so beautiful, and it really like. Thank you.
Folks, we have Rabbi Bressinger who's going to share with us. Please, Rabbi B. Rabbi B.
I'm ready to follow.
Yeah. See, I'm seasoned
I
now.
don't sleep well when I'm upset. My mind is hard.
So.
Don't even think of it. What you feel like.
This is amazing, right?
But anyways, no, I do pictures, but I couldn't describe their attire in a way that would help you discern what century they're from. I do remember them talking about how they asked the artists like fix the nose and the eyes, and if they weren't up to par, then fix this, fix that, can't just skip all. I know, I know. Good to see you. Okay, wake up. Yeah, yeah, and because they, as much as they existed and they let it happen, they still don't want to put up history like that. That's about it, I'm thinking, why not just forbid
Thursday.
So you find out you are still related on.
She was also a century technically.
It's already in my
Well, what I
schedule.
do there.
Rabbi,
Okay, folks.
your phone is coming up.
Huh?
That one.
Yeah.
That's one.
Thank you.
I didn't realize you were giving out. That's not the same as this one.
What?
What you gave us for tonight,
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
not all of them, just some of them.
Just down.
Thank you.
I was gonna come here already.
I just wanted to make sure you were present.
By me.
What I do is.
So.
Right.
German,
Yeah.
German.
Yes, and they probably send information letters to each other saying this is who I heard available for the king and this and this and this. And then one time she arrived, realized.
Yeah, but he was badly.
No such thing.
Oh, 100%,
He was badly, but you know, if you look, I tried to look, but they were very budget. I told you, it's not the days where everyone's snapping pictures for everyone. So I looked at her, at a photograph, I think she's a mother. Yeah, you know, like, there's something black, but sort of covered up, if you will. So, like, yeah. But you can see.
So here, you know.
Okay. Hello, everybody. And we have here in front of you a worksheet that we're gonna do something. Everyone's gonna go into pairs. Everyone's gonna go into pairs. You two are pairing up. Okay. Well, let's start. Okay, thank you. We're gonna go into pairs. You got a worksheet. You have 5 minutes to come up with why this. You don't have one over there?
No.
You should have. I left one over there for you. Okay. Right there, so good, that's the one. Oh, okay, good. So you have 5 minutes to discuss with your study partner why this could be said to be the source of Hanukkah.
Oh, really?
Go.
So.
The mind is actually active. That's the.
Anyone's watching, I'll just show you. This is from Lech Lecha, the parsha that talks about God telling Abraham that he's going to have a son. Before he tells him that, he tells him that he's going to have a son who's going to inherit his name, his greatness. And Abraham says something very strange. He says, Lu Yishmael Yechia Lefanecha. Lu Yishmael Yechia Lefanecha. Which means that Abraham is being told that he's going to have a son. He's going to have Isaac. And God says to him this, and then he answers back, but whoa, Lu Ishmael, which means Ishmael might let him be the one that inherits everything, and let him be the one. That we're saying here is what could be a source for Hanukkah, or at least a hint towards Hanukkah. So think about that. Well, everyone here is in pairs. We have an audience here of close to 200 people, and standing only, of course. We're in a great stadium here in the middle of downtown Montreal. It is cold out. We had to go outside because the group was, couldn't fit inside. It was a fire danger, right? To be inside, right? Okay, so you have 2 minutes left. Anybody? Were you even talking about it at all? You weren't even talking about it at all. You have an excuse. You went out of the room. Anybody?
Why do you think we're impaired?
I didn't say you're impaired. Very funny. Okay, here we go. Okay, let's bring it back here if we can. Did anybody, excuse me, did anybody have a chance to read it, to look at that, to discuss it? You did?
You read it.
I read it, I can't understand it.
You can't understand?
I don't have the answer to your question.
Okay,
No clue.
no clue.
No clue.
Faith in the face of doubt.
Say that again?
Faith,
Faith?
the face of doubt.
Faith in the face of doubt.
I feel, I don't know.
Okay. Anyone else? Any clue what this has at all to do with Hanukkah?
This is the beginning of our time, let's say. There was always the promises of Abraham, Ishmael went against him, so the Jews are always going to have a contrary sort of force. So the miracle of Hanukkah is like what Shana was just saying. We overcome that.
Okay.
And the miracle is in, that Hashem's always with us. That's the covenant. I'm always with you.
Can't go wrong with that. It's not the right answer, but it's great. I love it. The truth is, there really isn't a right answer, but kind of there is. Anyone else? You have an idea? No clue. It's very hard to see, but it brings the essence of Hanukkah. And let me tell you about the essence of Hanukkah. Well, first of all, a Jew could only come about with something that's higher than rationale. A Jew can only be born as a miracle. Now, Yishmael was not Jewish. Yishmael, what's the argument? Could you imagine God is saying to Abraham, you're going to have a son and everything's going to go to him and he's going to take on your mission in this world. And Abraham says back to God, these first, we see what I got highlighted over there or darkened. It says Lu means it could be Halavai Lu Yishmael Yechiel Lefanecha. Let it be Yishmael who inherits me. That's a powerful, we never thought of that question. I mean, it's right there all the time. But what's Avraham saying? So Avraham is making an argument, and he's making the same argument that the Greeks, Syrians, and even more extreme, Hitler, and less extreme, way less over here, there's an argument. As long as you're a good person. Let's see what he means. Avraham is saying, you know what? Ishmael is tops. He's great. He's going to be great. And look, God actually answers him and says, yes, okay, I've heeded you. The third line down, I hereby bless him. I will make him fertile and exceedingly numerous. He shall be the father of 12 chieftains, and I will make of him a great nation. But my covenant I will maintain with Yitzhak, whom Sarah shall bear. So basically, the concept here, and this is the philosophical argument at the times of the Greeks, Syrians, and the Jews at that time, it was good is not good enough. The best, they're still lacking. See, Ishmael had one soul, and of that soul, tops could be, at least at that point. And Yitzhak would have two souls. Yitzhak would have two souls. Yitzhak has something Ishmael could never have. It's a very tough thing to say, but without saying this, we're not going to really grab a hold of what Hanukkah is a celebration of. Thank you. Good night. So now, I'm just kidding. Okay, so we can ask a few questions that's going to help us zoom in on this concept. There's only one mitzvah in the entire 613? 620. Rabbinical, right? So there's only one mitzvah that's an obligation to have non-Jews witness. You don't need to build your sukkah in the middle of, but I mean, you can. It's wonderful if you could. Not on a highway that you don't want to. But, and sometimes with my grandchildren, no matter how big the sukkah is, it feels like it's the middle of the highway. But that's a different story. That's not what we're here tonight about. The idea is like this. There's only one mitzvah that has to be proclaimed to everybody. And it's the proclamation that stirs and bothers and can really upset an anti-Semite. It's a proclamation that as good as you can get. You can get as good, you can be the tops, you can be perfect. And we know the Greeks, what they came up with, I'm sure you heard over the last few hours, the Greeks were the best. Philosophy, sports, music, backgammon. The Greeks were the biggest, they're best, most advanced. Sounds familiar? The Germans in the 40s were pretty advanced in the 30s. You can even say they were a super race.
Well, they said it. I don't know if we agree, but they said it.
They had an argument. They were the best they can be. They were the top of the line. I don't want to confuse this idea of evil and good. I'm just talking about striving to be the best. You can't be the very best if there's something beyond you. I'm not going to be the best. And therefore, as long as you're around, you that is beyond the best, as long as you're around, who am I?
Second best.
What am I? Now, why did they need I don't know if have you been asked this tonight? Do you know this? Why did they need the oil to be sealed by the Kohen Gadol? You know why?
Special process for 8 days.
Special process, yeah. Anything
It
else?
should be contaminated by it.
What?
It should not be contaminated.
It should not be contaminated. Contaminated. Yes. Anything else? What? Kodesh. Who just said that? Okay, you did that without moving your lips. By the way, all of those answers, the concept of tuma, the concept of defilement has to do with touching death. The whole idea of the Beis Hamikdash, the temple, was all about life. So anything that was all about life could not come in contact with anything death, defilement, unless everything is defiled. Everybody's touched death. It's one big death thing. One big impurity. They didn't need pure oil. Halachically, they could have used the regular oil that was impure because of the state of the being that was then, with the wars that were going on. And it's interesting to read about the history, the amount of wars that was happening. It wasn't like a one-time battle. They kept on coming back, even after Hanukkah. It was unbelievable violence and death. So therefore, they didn't need the pure. So why, first of all, how were they so sure they're going to find it? They didn't, I can't find things that are right in front of my face, my wife tells me. It's not here. That always means it's right in front of my face. So when they went into the temple, they weren't me. It really wasn't there. It really wasn't there. Where was it? They had to look and look and look. Now, I don't know about you. If I don't think something's there, I don't really look. I don't know. I'm not motivated. I'm sure it's somewhere else. Maybe it's like distracted, but I'm not going to look too hard. If I know it's there, okay, that's one thing. But why did they know it's there? How did they know it's there? Why'd they even look? Because it was the whole source of the conflict, the whole philosophical difference between good is the best, is great, versus something above it. Good is good, but it's not necessarily godly. There's good. We can all be good. We all need to be good. Absolutely, as best we can. Everybody strives to be the best they can, pretty much. It's a fair thing to say. Most people don't wake up thinking today is going to be the day. Actually, I don't know if that's true. There are mornings. But nevertheless, the fact is, overall, we want to be the best. We want to do good. We want to do good. So what's wrong with that? Isn't that enough? Isn't it enough to be good? It's not enough. Why be good? What's the motivation for being good? By the way, you know what's motivation? You know what, in the liquids that we have, oil is referred to as the motivator. It keeps the flame going. It's what motivates it. What motivates a person to be good in general? Tell me. The godly soul is not about being good. The godly soul is not about being good. The godly soul is about being godly.
Believe in karma.
Karma, that's a good one. Karma. If I'm good, I'll get good back. Transactional. Any other reasons to be good? Why? What do you want to connect for?
Because there's Hashem in the life. Good, depends what good means, but I mean.
Right. So we're saying over here, good without God is not godly. the Greeks' philosophy, and not just the Greeks. I think it's a very general philosophical argument by very good people. What do you need to have mitzvahs for? In other words, you know what? Well, light the menorah, but I'm not going to make a blessing on it. Do I need to make a blessing? You know, Shabbos is great. I turn off my phone for 25 hours. It's a good thing. But is that what it's about? We know for sure, we used to say kosher is healthier. You ever been at any, anyway, that's a separate, that's a side point.
Look across there.
Yeah. So the reason for the mitzvahs can't be only they're good. They're godly. They're what God wants. They're what God wants, not what I want necessarily. Why am I doing it? What is my soul here for? My soul is here to be good. No, it's not. It didn't need to be good. It was good. It was fine where it was. It came here to experience what God wants and to fulfill it. That's godly. That's godly. And it's tough because you know what? I don't know about you, but when I do a mitzvah, do I really do it for God? Do I really do anything that's not for my benefit? I'm going to be honest here. You have a minute? Think about that. I can tell you this concept of unconditional love. I have a group. I just spend a lot of time in groups. I work with addiction and I spend a lot of time in groups. There's one group of people on Zoom from all over, and these are people with 40, 50 years sobriety. Yeah. And they're refined people. They've been working on themselves 50 years where they wouldn't be sober. And at the end of it, this morning, I have it every Sunday morning. At the end of it, not at the end of it. After one person shares, a few of them say, "Love you, John. Love you. Love." And I cringe. No, you don't. What do you mean you love him?
Means nothing.
I don't know. Maybe that's me, but
Means nothing.
come on. As a matter of fact, I'm going to tell you a story my grandchildren loved. My children loved it. I don't think my grandchildren really like it that much, but I'll tell you anyways. There was a king who loved fish.
Oh, yeah.
You heard about that?
Yes.
Really? What happened?
The fish wasn't happy in the end.
The fish wasn't happy. Wait a second. Why wasn't he
Because he
happy?
didn't really love fish, he loved
Yeah.
to eat them.
Yeah.
Good night. Did he really love fish? He didn't love fish. He loved the way the fish tasted in his mouth. He didn't love the fish. How much? You love fish. Why? Okay. Okay.
So she actually loves
Yeah,
fish.
I love
Okay,
She does
good.
love fish.
How much do I truly, unconditionally, without getting any benefit whatsoever, love? Of course, there's exceptions. Of course, you hope your kids, your wife, parents. But I can still question it. Like, I need to question it, especially with others. By the way, want to hear something powerful? You know, Hanukkah is all about the left hand, right? Because it's a cross in the mezuzah. The mezuzah is on the right. The menorah is on the left. Hanukkah is all about the left. It's the only one about the left. Left is not, the right is, you know, I have my oldest son. It's so funny. When he was younger or whatever, he always told us, if you ever lost, go right. And it's pretty much worked. Anyways, right. The right is might, right is the right thing. So somebody was once by the Rebbe in a private audience and the Rebbe asked him a question. He said, right is, yeah? So why is our heart on our left side? It's a good question. It's because when I'm facing you, your heart is on my right. And really, it's about your heart. It's not about my heart. It's about your heart. It's about real love. It's a beautiful thing. So if I am doing something and it's hard for me to do it that's non-transactional, how much more so to do something with an invisible God who hasn't come out in a while? And you know, famous George Harrison, I want to see you. I want to be with you. You know. So here's an invisible God, and he gives us his mitzvahs, and he tells me, you're not doing the mitzvahs. Don't do the mitzvahs because you're going to gain from it. Yeah, you will gain from it. Yes, that's all good and fine. But if you want to do the mitzvahs the way I want them to be done, you do them for me. Because you do them for you, it's good. You do it for me, it's godly. It's godly. It doesn't, by the way, it doesn't, we're not putting do the mitzvahs for whatever reason. You know, if you're walking on the beach and a big wave comes over you, it counts as a mikvah. So there are many mitzvahs you don't even have to know you're doing. Walk on the beach. Huh? Yeah, there's lots of mitzvahs you don't even have to know about, so do them. But what the argument of Chanukah is, and it exists very much today in a lot of ways, is this idea of good is great, but it's not godly. It's not godly. That's the challenge. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said, when we light the menorah, unless you heard this tonight, when you light the menorah, you know what you're supposed to do with the candles? You want to hear something beautiful? You're supposed to listen to them. For 20 minutes, a half hour, listen to the candles because they're telling us something. What?
Telling us something.
They're telling us something. What are they telling us, those candles? Light a candle and see and look, listen. It's telling us something. Transcendence is where it's at. Because if the candle had its way, if the flame had its way, it would leave the wick. You see it dancing. And then if it leaves the wick, it disappears. The truth is no element disappears, but it becomes subsumed. The candle's saying that. Hanukkah is about that. Hanukkah is about transcend good. Become subsumed, but remember, it's not going to stay lit. It's got to have the oil. It's got to have the grounding. It's got to have the motivation. And what's the motivation? Because our souls came into this world for the world's sake. The world needs us to be aware of and tell them, everyone, first with ourselves, tell ourselves, that the Jewish people have a divine mission. It's about bringing godliness here. Don't hate us for that, because I think the Rebbe would say, if we're straight and we say the truth, of course, there's always going to be anti-Semites. That's not a question. Always. But so much of the world is yearning for us to be godly, to be aware of it's all about being godly. And the fact is, and I'm going to throw everything off right now, no matter what you do, no matter what you don't do, a Jew is a Jew is a Jew. And no matter what, you're godly. You got the second soul. Yitzchak doesn't have to do anything. He's born that way. But it's about the awareness. And when the rest of the world's philosophy is telling us, all you got to do is be good. Be the best. the Greeks' point is a legitimate point. Strive to be the best. They weren't saying, we had other enemies that were saying, do what you want. They weren't saying do what you want. To excel, they had to excel at everything they were doing. It's powerful. There's truth to it, but it's not true. We have to excel, but we have to always know then comes a point where good is still not going to be godly. And so this Hanukkah, we should listen to the candles and we should tell ourselves that we are godly, that we're sent here to make sure that the world is aware of godliness. That's why the menorah has to be in the public. That's why it's got to be in dark, because the message of Hanukkah is an eternal one. And that's what Mashiach is all about. Mashiach is nothing unusual. It's not. What's unusual is God is hiding. If there is a God, and I believe that, and there are days that I do, if there is a God, then it's not such a jump to think that he'll one day reveal himself. It's not like, if I first agree with the first part, then, and he's all powerful, I got that's good. This is all there is. It's great, especially if this room used to look like. But there's so much more to be revealed. So it's about opening our eyes and making l'chaim and celebrating just how godly we really are and how the world is godly, waiting to be revealed. That's it. L'chaim, l'chaim. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Go ask somebody else, why is this Hanukkah a good one?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Good night. Way past my bed.
Good night.
Six to 8:30.
6 to 8:30, so it's only half an hour. Are you two married?
Sometimes.
Okay, I didn't know. I mean, I know you separately.
Oh, okay.
You know, I never
Oh, so
knew
you
that
met him already? And
Yes,
Shlomo?
yes,
Oh,
yeah.
so
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Good. Together 42 years.
Really nice.
Up here.
Up here with you. No, they said how kind of person. I said,
Oh, because Isaac had second thought. And Ishmael had regular one soul. And he was gonna make a break in the end, but Isaac, the reason why they Isaac was the person that gets to the mother's Jewish. Well, then again, the mother was Jewish, but Isaac is also.
no, no, Ishmael, no, I got.
Oh, that's right, he had something, so there you go, so
So she Muslim, you know, such
Yeah,
things.
no, I just, I
Yeah.
blanked out that one, but the thing is, so Isaiah was good. But Isaac was really good. Wasn't he the one who, at the time, while Ishmael was running around and claiming, his. Yeah, one like that he's gonna take over while Isaac was kind of like above everybody, not or studying and doing all his stuff and he isolated himself from everybody else. Whereas Ishmael would go around and Ishmael go around and tell everybody. So one brother is not, let's say, marketing himself the way the other was, because he was just like my mother was telling him, come and the people around it's understand them and want to know them. One day, you'll be in charge.
Yeah, that was the Roman.
That's what I remember from one of the lectures that I was there for. I finally saw that connection, but that was interesting. So all the same, two sons were important.
Some of you are
important.
real troopers.
Yeah. I thought it was supposed to be.
We're in it to win it.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Rabbi.
Thank you. All right, folks.